On today's episode of At Your Doorstep, we're going to be diving into a little bit about warehouse automation and bringing robots into a space that typically is overrun with people and product. To talk to us a little bit about this, we've got the CEO of Locus Robotics, Rickfaulk, joining us today. Rick, thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Kind of cool to get into this space talking about what could be considered the robotic takeover, but not quite, right? Before we dive into that, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into the autonomy and robotic space.
Sure. Well, again, my name is Rickfaulk. I'm the CEO of Locust. One of my first businesses was actually a distribution business back a long, long time ago. And you realize when you're in this business that the biggest problem that everyone has today is labor. And it's a big, big problem. And today, companies cannot find actually enough labor to ship what's been sold. So to me, it was a big problem and one that attracted me to the space because it was a very big problem that folks have to solve. And, at a high level, what Locust does, we have a robotic solution that automates e-commerce and fulfillment warehouses. And there are about 100,000 of them right now around the globe that have to be automated. And we increase the productivity significantly of workers that work in those buildings, make those operations run much more effectively.
So there's kind of like a taboo space behind the idea of automation, right? People hear the words robots, automation, and they immediately think, I'm going to lose my job. But that's not kind of what you guys work around at Locust, right? You guys are kind of in the business of marrying together that partnership of autonomous labor with actual people labor. Talk to me about that and why that's so crucial to your business model and the success of your product.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago, the topic was robots are going to replace humans. And all those jobs are going to go away. And the reality is today that robots are making, at least our solution, we have a collaborative robotic solution. Our robots are making humans much more effective and making the jobs a lot easier. I'm actually down here in Memphis, Tennessee today and visiting some of our accounts. And the stories we get from associates that actually work with our robots is we make their lives a lot easier. I was with a lady yesterday who typically walks in a manual operation 12 to 15 miles a day.
Wow.
And what she said was, you have saved my knees. And we do that. We bring down walking from 12 to 15 miles a day down to 2 to 3 miles a day and make their lives a lot easier. We do a number of other things as well about giving them feedback about how they're doing for the day and that sort of thing. So many of these jobs today go unfilled, and our solution addresses that problem, thing one, and secondly, those that do work with our robots, we do make their lives a lot better.
And it's not
that topic really has gone away.
It's not just that quality of life aspect, but also that time-saving aspect too. Robots can be used to really do a lot of those menial tasks that take a lot of time in that warehouse space, whether that's replacing inventory from one place to another or even processing returns. Talk to me a little bit about how Locust is working to kind of take those time sinks almost and turn them into a more productive space just overall.
Well, you're right. With the explosion in e-commerce that's happened over the last 4 or 5 years, returns have gone up significantly. We call it the Goldilocks problem. So if you're ordering one of those pink blouses you have on, you may order 3 different sizes and then pick the one you actually fits. And that happens with shoes. It happens with a host of other things. So the reality is that returns have gone up significantly as a result of the spike in e-commerce. And what our robots do, they automate that function as well. So in addition to doing the pick function that we do, we also automate returns. So we make that function a lot easier. And also when goods arrived on a truck, we take those goods and actually stick them on shelves as well. So we make the whole process, we think about it as sort of truck to truck. We make that whole process a lot easier. And again, the explosion in e-commerce really has aggravated this whole problem. It made it a lot worse.
Is there any benefit to using robots when it comes to the idea of product preservation? Like if you're using a human who's got a forklift, who's taking a pallet off of a truck and moving it from point A to point B, obviously there's a lot of space for human error. Whereas if you have a robot who doesn't necessarily have those distractions and is running on something that's automated to tell them how to do this task, there's not really that space for error, right? So are you guys finding that clients are more inclined to take on this robotics because they're like, hey, we can use this to keep our product the way that we want it to without necessarily having to worry worry about that human component.
Yeah, the nice thing about robotics, you hit the nail on the head. It really does reduce error rates as well, significantly. We have software in place and tools in place and scanners in place that really reduce error rates next to nothing. And error rates are expensive when you ship something out to a customer and you're shipping the wrong product. You have a customer sat problem, thing one, and secondly, you have a cost. You've got to process that return, pay double freight. So the nice thing about robotics, it does bring those error rates down to next to nothing, and that's a big benefit right now of going from a manual operation to a fully automated operation.
So when it comes to this actually putting robots into practice and into use, you guys just announced a really, really big partnership with DHL with plans to get robots in their warehouses by 2022. Talk to me a little bit about how big this partnership is for the industry, where it's going to take your guys' relationship with DHL and other big companies like that, and how other people could see this and say, hey, maybe this is a solution that I can take on too.
Yeah, we're really excited about the relationship. First of all, DHL is one of the most innovative 3PLs on the planet. They're doing a number of things. Of course, we're happy about what they're doing with us, but they're doing a number of other things as well. So what they're doing, they're rolling out what they're calling an advanced digital strategy, and we're enabling that with robotics. And what it does, it allows them to be much more cost effective in pursuing new business. It allows them to get data to operate those businesses much more effectively. And bottom line, it drives value for their clients. And that's what it's all about. And they're experiencing things like faster cycle times, getting product out the door quicker, being able to meet seasonal peaks, being able to keep employees because the work is a lot easier. So we're really excited about it. We announced a 2,000 robot deal. These will be robots deployed in the US and Europe, eventually APAC for DHL. And bottom line, they're innovating to bring more value to their clients, and we're really excited about it.
And so talk to me a little bit about the process of getting from where you guys were starting off with this idea, hey, let's get robots in the warehouse, make things better, safer, faster, overall more efficient, and then now seeing it come to fruition with this massive partnership. What does that feel like, and how does it kind of just provide some inspiration for these people going forwards and saying that this could be possible for you too?
Yeah. So 4 or 5 years ago, this industry, we talk about it as sort of a find out. 3PLs and retail accounts deployed robots to find out if they really worked. They wanted to make sure that robots didn't run over things. They wanted to make sure they were getting the gains and that sort of thing. Wanted to make sure there was a value prop. And that was, like I say, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And now everyone's going to a rollout. And the rollout is they've done these tests. They found out that these solutions actually worked, and now they're rolling out to multiple sites. We have many accounts that have many sites with us, and the reason they have those sites is because the solution works. So this industry really over the last 3 or 4 years has found that inflection point of going from a find out, does it really work, to a rollout. And most accounts right now, if you're a major 3PL, to be competitive, you really need to automate. Whether it's with Locust or anyone else, you have to automate, because when you go after new business, pursuing new business, if you're automated, you have a cost advantage. You have an advantage that you can talk about. You can deal with seasonal peaks better. You can recruit workers, and allows you to be much more competitive in the space. So it really has turned from what was a nice to have to a mandate. There's a mandate to automate right now. It's not all going to happen over the next 3 months or 6 months, or maybe even several years. But over the next 4 or 5 years, most of these 100,000 facilities right now around the globe will be automated, and Locust will play a very key role in that automation process.
So we touched on the idea of labor shortages a little bit earlier in our conversation. And obviously COVID has created this massive labor shortage, and it's not necessarily in the jobs availability, but in people aren't necessarily wanting to return to work, or they have these changing expectations for what their life is going to be like once they do return from work, and have these increased expectations out of their employers. Do you think that companies are going to see this, I guess, possible employee sentiment of people not wanting to come back to work, or having these overarching huge expectations, and think, hey, what if we take our efforts and our money and put that investment into robotics instead of trying to raise the human capital of bringing these new people into people or to jobs that they may not be excited about or be interested in when we can just invest in a robot instead. So is the labor shortage that we're seeing right now really going to drive an investment into further robotics, do you think?
The answer is absolutely yes, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing it every single week in our sales process. Most major retail accounts right now, industrial accounts, healthcare accounts, they're experiencing that labor problem. COVID really has exacerbated the problem, and they're trying to figure out how best to deal with the problem and automation. The nice thing about a robot, when you deploy a robot, it's going to show up every day of the week and it's going to work as long as you feed a little power. You can deploy it and it works and it shows up every single day. And the human capital side in this industry, turnover is measured in many cases, double digits a month in a lot of these buildings. You've got a training problem, you have a cost problem. And the nice thing about robotics, like I say, they show up every single day. And they work, and it's just a much more effective way to go to market. And like I say, to be competitive going forward, and it's the problem's going to be aggravated over the next several years. These accounts really do have to automate, and that's what we're saying, and we're seeing it every single week.
And so one of those benefits of the actual physical labor takeover by robots is that you can see people now moving into those more HR people-related tasks, which gives the opportunity for better training development, better people relations, and that can attract more talent in the future, right? But in your opinion, those robots, even if they're taking over those physical tasks, wouldn't necessarily lead to a complete cutout of those other jobs, right? It would just kind of shift the focus into the adaptation of more human capital-based work.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman who works at one of our major accounts, and he found a new role in this account as a robotics expert, robotics specialist. And so he was a lower level employee in the organization and now elevated himself up because he's now the robotics specialist in this organization. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're actually creating jobs in many of these accounts. And it's something that robotics is doing across the world. It really is creating employment versus eliminating employment. We're seeing a lot of that.
And that's kind of an unintentional benefit. But once you see that come to fruition, you're like, wow, this is something we could have never imagined happening. Talking about looking forward, can you give me any snapshots of what Locust is working on next? Any exciting partnerships coming up? Or is this DHL deal kind of the big one, the big thing that's happening for the rest of 2021?
Yeah, for us, it's all about, we think about this year as being 2x. We're expanding our employee base about 2x to meet all the demand. We're expanding our capital base. We just raised a very, very large amount of capital, $150 million. So we're expanding our capital base fairly significantly, and going deeper into our market segments. We deal in 4 market segments today. They're all growing. We're going deeper into those, increasing our sales and marketing footprint into those market segments, and developing many more features in our product. And it's it's one of those opportunities that's there to go after right now. And as a company, we're going after it very, very aggressively.
Awesome, Rick. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today on At Your Doorstep. Super exciting to see where Locust is going to go in the future. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on it, and have a great rest of your day.